Hey y'all, it is February the 28th, 2020. I just realized tomorrow is leap day. Alright, so anything goes tomorrow. Alright, nobody's gonna write it down. That being said, I believe we're on the internet. I actually meant to check the audio to see if it was working, and I just totally forgot. So hopefully it is working, but I have no idea until I see some people coming up in the building. Then I'm gonna ask you politely. In the meantime, I meant to get ready for today's broadcast. I even put aside some time for it, and I was just fixing to, but I was distracted. And I'm gonna tell you why, and I'll show you why I was distracted right after we get into the vibes, right? After we get into our mode. All right, and we get all zoned in. So that being said, I found a particular cover that I think that you're gonna enjoy. Not only that, I think it's very appropriate. I don't know, because I didn't have that much preparation to do, but over the past couple of days, I've been thinking about some sort of things and pondering them in my mind. For some reason, I feel like that this is gonna be appropriate. So shout out to everybody out there. This one's dedicated to Bart Fine out there, international Playboy. Oh yeah, Academia de Rock. Alright, those are some gentlemen. You can check them out of the Latino persuasion. Alright, it's called Cultural Appropriation, and I loved it. Loved every little bit of it. It's come to my attention that actually probably didn't come through very well in the recording. There was some buffering going on, and it's a major disservice to y'all that my technology is delivered to y'all right now, and for that I apologize. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly. All right, as I'm getting my wherewithal, hold on. Need to wipe my nose just a little bit. Y'all, we're about to get into the broadcast. We're gonna go all willy-nilly. Hopefully we got the audio coming in strong. Alright, we're fixing to find out when somebody rolls up in the building, but I understand it's Friday night. And people got stuff that they're getting into tonight. I don't blame them, alright? everybody gets a little bit antsy, I guess, when it's coming up to the weekend. There's things to do. Me, not personally, because I'm about to go to work in a little while. All right, so I don't even think about it. But Friday night is pretty good news day. Typically, everything comes to a head towards the end of the week, certainly, and certainly certain things drop at the end of the week. So that's to make sure that we don't pay attention to it. Probably. Probably that's happening tonight. I meant to do some preparation, set some time out for it. It didn't work out because I got into a conversation with a good friend of mine, good friend of mine, brother of mine. Everybody's brothers out there have mine, and sisters and stuff. But this guy I know very well, all right? And he was hollering at me, and he actually sent me a picture, and I thought it was epic, honestly, epic. And we were talking about it. I had to talk to him about it a little bit. This guy. And I'll tell you a little bit about this guy, although I don't want to dox him or reveal his identity. And you'll see that that's clear. I mean, you don't want to dox people, especially if they're not internet personalities. And he's definitely not one, this guy I'm talking about. He hardly makes it on the internet. He doesn't really know what's going on the internet. But check this out right here. Right? You might could tell that this guy, oh dang it, if I zoom in, he's like way above the earth, way above the earth. He's high up there. All right, he's on one of those towers, cell phone tower. He's got a hard hat. All right, and guess what? You see the background. Oh man, so that's the thing. You ain't gonna see no Bernie flags up there. That's what I could promise you. But he also let me know that if you zoom in, check this out. Damn, that's epic. That's epic. And this dude, he didn't even realize, but check out his pose. Look at this. Does that remind you of anything? Like, check out the bottom. All right, he didn't even realize because he doesn't know who Pepe the Frog is. And I was like, dude, you look just like Pepe the Frog. And he took it wrong like you would imagine, but I had to let him know who Pepe the Frog was. And that's pretty dang baller. Anyways, I had to talk to him a little bit about that. Didn't get prepared for the broadcast. But I feel like we just wing it. Right now, I'm switching over from coffee to tea. I don't know if that's going to be making a difference, all right? But I felt the need to switch over, so we might have a little bit of a different style tonight, all right? I'm not sure what we're getting into tonight, all right? But this tea is delicious, all right? I just wanted to tell you about it. We might as well go through screenshots and do a little bit of a news blitz for tonight and see if we can knock it out. My intent, I gotta let y'all know, is to just race through these. And it always is. There's always stuff to interject, obviously, about it because it's wild and crazy. I see that somebody's up in the building. So please, like, type in a number 1 or something. Just type in any letter at all into the comment section if you can hear what it is I'm saying. Look, I'm moving around and I'm carrying on. If there was no audio, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? All right. And so I trust that you would let me know about it. Okay, but let's see. Okay, what we're going to attempt to do, like I've always attempted to do before, is to run through the screenshots. Maybe we'll talk about them afterwards, but we want to get a good wherewithal. What's going on? Clearview AI has billions of your photos. Its entire client list was just stolen. That's from CNN, all right? Okay, BTS carpool karaoke. Is this stuff related? I can assure you that it is, all right? Let's go on to the next one. Multiple arrests following Colorado Springs daycare. You might remember with the false wall. Look at it, December 26th, December 25th. Those aren't recent, all right? Just wanted to point that out. All right, so check this out. Because Trump has the diet of a 5-year-old, his doctors hid vegetables in his food. That's actually more egregious than you can even understand yet. We're going to talk about it probably in a second. CDC warns men about facial hair. Danger. Dangers. As coronavirus spreads, we're going to have something to say about that. The dude on the other end of this camera has a beard. Florida woman allegedly zipped boyfriend in a suitcase, leaving him to die. Hey, by the way, shout me out in the comments, obviously, or, I mean, the fact is that you're here would lead me to believe that you can hear me, and I just want to make sure. We're going through the news. Police officer fired for giving feces sandwich to homeless man. We're definitely going to talk about that. That's actually local news. Hold on one second. Drag Queen Story Hour. Help fund Drag Queen Story Hour in 2020 through storytelling, dressing up, and believing in ourselves. We can create. I'm not going to go ahead and finish that. All right, that's on Instagram if you want to find it. Let's go to this. Justice Department announces nationwide arrest of members of neo-Nazi group Adam Waffen. You remember when I was telling you about them a long time ago because nobody heard about them? And I was like, hey, you're about to hear about them all over the place? That's ABC News. And you're going to see it on CNN and everywhere else. I don't know what that is. See, instead of giving loose change to San Antonio panhandlers, text a donation for safety. Better service. Wow. Wow. Okay. Wow. Former Bexar County Constable Barrientos Vela in court facing multiple charges. I'm not sure, but I think she advanced on a male officer and tried to advance on his Pepe the Frog up in the dang hot tub. I might be totally mistaken about that, but I think that's kind of like at the root of her problems. But I'm not sure. I've actually heard from that. Like, that's local news. She wants to be the sheriff, and she's running for the sheriff of Bexar County. That person who I'm talking about. Anyways, Elizabeth Warren talks healthcare minimum wage and the border during San Antonio stop. I totally missed that one. Nobody told me about that. Right? More American pedestrians are dying than in the past 30 years. You might think that that's random, but we've actually been covering that for some time now. All right, how many dang screenshots do I have? Alabama senators' power play kept 144 coronavirus cruise ship evacuees in San Antonio. I tend to believe that that's fake news. I don't hold it against Alabama. San Antonio Express News is actually the official publication of Central Texas drag queens. All right, just all over the place, and I can prove it to you. I'll prove it to you later. All right, the rise of wait, what? The rise of the gay killer. Why pop culture is suddenly thirsty for queer blood. That's actually. I don't know if we can say that on YouTube without getting banned. To be honest, and for that I apologize. But that was actually, and that's in the news. That's on a headline. And the thing is, we've seen that before. Shout out, you've seen that before up in the comment section. Or just let me know what you're doing. If you're out there, you might be lurking. I appreciate you. Anyways, Milwaukee mass shooter, you might have heard of this, is a black Elizabeth Warren supporter. And I don't hold this against Elizabeth Warren, obviously. But it will make you think about her rhetoric and what it all actually means. Pennsylvania mom overdoses Cookie Monster costume outside babysitter's house. And I don't know how significant necessarily that this story is going to be. This is all alleged. Allegedly, this lady was tripping out on drugs in a Cookie Monster outfit, and she's being charged with child neglect, or they're going to try to do it. We'll talk about it later. Illegal alien fined $280 for killing 2 law enforcement officers still driving freely in the U.S. allegedly. That's what they say about this guy, but I don't know if that's correct. Maybe it is. This one guy attempts to suicide by lion by stripping naked and jumping into the lion's cage. You might have seen that. Did you see that? It's crazy, right? I read a little bit about that. Americans are avoiding Corona beer amid coronavirus outbreak. Okay. And survey says 38% of beer drinking Americans won't buy Corona beers. What was that? KSAT, that's local. KSAT News, and then we got Motley Fool. I don't know what they're talking about. Nearly 40% of drinking beer Americans. First, it was a joke, but Corona beer is really suffering. Wisconsin police warned recently bought meth may in fact contain coronavirus. Right? Which, just so that you know, that actually turns out to be a joke. I looked into it. Wisconsin police warn that recently bought meth may in fact contain coronavirus. Kansas Sheriff's Office warning local meth may contain or be contaminated with coronavirus. Coronavirus affects local businesses, sports teams in unlikely ways. All sort of weird coronavirus things, but to include being linked with methamphetamines, and it is a joke, but at the same time, what y'all are doing is joking about an epidemic of methamphetamines all over us at the same time. Anyways, I don't know why you're joking about it, but you are. And then we end on that screenshot, all right, which is pretty epic that we discussed earlier. I don't know if y'all were in the building for this, but this is what was taking up my time. I was actually discussing a good friend of mine right here, and his identity will go unknown, all right? But he basically looks a lot like Pepe the Frog. I think he got possessed by Pepe the Frog. Anyways, we actually made it through the dang screenshots, and that's what I wanted to do. Do you feel all flustered and dizzy? You probably should, but we're gonna resolve that, or hopefully we're gonna resolve that. We're gonna try to calm down. Now that we got that all out of the way, that's good. And we can dwell upon like maybe what we passed through that's most important. If y'all had, say, a favorite out there, you can let me know, and we'll definitely cover that. But we can't cover it all necessarily. I mean, we already ran through it all. But like, for example, remember Clearview AI has billions of your photos and the entire client list was stolen? Okay, all your information and all your everything what you look like from every angle, that's all gonna be stolen. That all is stolen. And you might be freaked out about that, but they're just letting you know, hey, look, all your stuff is already pre-stolen, and whatever, dude. That's the end of it. You think you're gonna put the cat back in the bag? No, you're not. Everybody's stuff is stolen. So we had to operate in such a way that we know that our privacy could be put on blast. Not only that, it could be fake news against us. Any one of these people. That's why people need to come out publicly with their opinions and just live right, or whatever they deem is right, and publicly stand for what they stand for. Because when they get taken down off false allegations, know that all your information, to include your identity and what you look like, is all monitored and stolen. All right, that's why we brought that one up. But the thing is, they're gonna come out with headlines over and over and over saying the same damn thing. It's like, yeah, your stuff's stolen. My stuff is stolen. There's no going back from that. So you'd have to have the mentality of the fact is your stuff's stolen. BTS, carpool, karaoke. The reason I bring it up, it's nothing against these guys, but you know that they're the most popular thing in the world, right? If you have like a teenage daughter or something, you know this. You heard of them, right? And it's pretty ridiculous. I'm not trying to down them. I'm not trying to down all the people who's making money off of them. All right, good for them. That's what they do. But the problem is not them, but just the generality of all the females growing up are going to be attracted somehow, some way to this. And your son or nephew or whatever is not going to be able to live up to this standard because he's not a you know what I'm saying? He doesn't have relations with men. I don't know how to say it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how to not get banned off of YouTube. And the thing is, I should have got banned off of YouTube a long time ago. But that's the thing about it. They're supposed to be attracted to men who will basically never fulfill their desires and live a totally wretched life. This stuff is an example of injustice. The reason I brought it up is because there is nothing recent about Carla Faith. And just go ahead and Google it. But you're probably going to have to Google Carla Faith, Colorado, because otherwise they're not even going to bring it up. If you and you already know what it is, the whole basically kidnapping and doing whatever you want with little toddlers in a secret basement that everybody knows is secret. You hid behind a secret wall. When the cops came to your property, you jumped a fence to get out of the way. I mean, you were really not answering their phone calls. You were really ducking and diving the cops over this sort of situation. Meanwhile, your quote employees in the secret basement had methamphetamine paraphernalia up in their backpack and were looking all strung out. And of course, everything about this was illegal. But guess what? Sweep it under the rug. Don't even talk about this. What? Did this happen? Oh, that's never happened, did it? in Colorado Springs. All right, just swept under the rug. No, that's not sensational at all. Meanwhile, as the years go by, you're gonna find out that a lot of these here toddlers been traumatized, and it's gonna actually come out in different various ways that are gonna be very apparent. I.e., a Steven Spielberg's daughter, if I understand correctly, or a stepdaughter, or something. Yeah, you're going to see the results of the traumatization, and it's going to be all up in your face just like it is today. All right? It causes you to think about it maybe a little bit. See, but we can't go through all the screenshots because it's like, it's too many screenshots. The whole beard thing, y'all are slipping and tripping to think that, the CDC is going to come out and they're going to put out this stupid thing about, okay, this is what kind of facial hair you should have. And it's like, dude, y'all are damn ridiculous and you can't run anything. And nobody should look to y'all for anything as far as some sort of advice. It's ridiculous. I mean, over the top. All sort of things like this lady, she zipped her boyfriend up in a suitcase, and the problem is that she said it was an accident. They were drunk and just having fun, and they thought it was funny. And then she passed out, and he wound up actually dying. If you can imagine that sort of nightmare, in a suitcase that he could not get out of, struggling and asphyxiating until he was no longer with us. Right? And this lady allegedly, I don't know. She was like, "Oh man, but I got drunk, passed out. I didn't know what I was doing." But cell phone footage that she shot allegedly seems to differ with her what she was saying. All right, and like, if you can even imagine, that was wild. But this one's wild too. That's local news. Look at that guy's face. All right, look at that guy's face. Police officer fired, giving a poop sandwich to the homeless. All right, and he wins his job back. And it was interesting because I hadn't heard about this at all, and that's local San Antonio news, and I hadn't heard about it. Right, that's kind of older news. Like this thing was published on January the 30th. It's pretty much a month ago that this was published. I never heard of it, right? And I actually didn't wind up hearing anything more about it until the next time something happened, to include this guy, right? In which this guy allegedly went to, I guess, the bike cops, in which I personally know the person who supplies the bike cops with their bikes. I know that guy personally, and he's actually my bicycle advisor. And I haven't seen him for a while, but I need to holler at him. And anyways, he went to the bicycle cops, the women's restroom for the bicycle cops. And he allegedly, along with a partner, smeared feces all over the restrooms. It's like, dude, and I hadn't even heard of it. It's like, dude, that is a bad sign for society. Now, maybe he didn't do this, and maybe his character is being assassinated, but I doubt it. If you're looking at it, I just doubt it. The drag queen story hour thing, that's all important. Everything's important. Um, but it's just like what all we talk about. This one's pretty important. For example, Justice Department announces, as we mentioned, nationwide arrest for members of neo-Nazi group Adam Waffen. And so you know how it's funny, and we've been laughing at it here esoterically, and nobody else knows about it. It doesn't matter who we bring up this topic to, they're never ever going to know who Adam Waffen is. And so we were just laughing about it for months, and just all the while predicting what they were going to do. And in that, they were putting out these BS publications that you never heard of, putting out these headlines. Oh man, get out of the way, man. Anyways, the Justice Department, now they're getting on top of it. Apparently, allegedly, does that guy Barr have something to do with this? What does he have to say about this? What does he know about this? But meanwhile, for all that time, they were putting out these publications you never heard of, so you never saw the headlines, all the while building it up. And meanwhile, I was watching it. They were like, "Oh yeah, 3 murders have been attributed to this Adam Waffen group." Meanwhile, if you looked into it, the Adam Waffen group was actually the ones being murdered. And in fact, nobody claims the Adam Waffen group, and it could be that y'all are just making it up. And so, or it could be that it's all a joke and it's funny, and everybody does jokes on the internet these days because they live on the internet, the youth. Anyways, okay, so you look into those murders, you realize, okay, that doesn't make sense. And then later on, as time goes by, they're like, you know what? Adam Waffen is tied to 5 different murders, and then you see that they're tacking more on, and then you look into it, and you're like, oh man, this has nothing to do with anything. They're just putting some random situation and attributing it to Adam Waffen. I swear I saw an article just the other day that said 8 murders, 8 of them, 8 murders now. All right, allegedly, that you never heard of. Justice Department announces nationwide arrest of the neo-Nazi Adam Waffen group, and this is on ABC News. And I think I seen it on CNN News. So now they're running with it just like I said that they were going to run with it. And so it leads me to believe that I'm some sort of psychic or whatever. Like, I have psychic abilities. And if I do have psychic abilities, I think they're going to go even further with it. Like, for example, in New Jersey, they have some sort of neo-Nazi state of emergency. And I'm not making that up. They don't exist. Now, they could be out there. If they are, they're very low in number and they're not popular. In fact, they're the least popular thing in America as far as I could tell. All right, and they got nothing going for them. If they do exist, and I doubt that they exist, and I think it's all a joke. And I think people are being snatched up across the nation to include, let's not forget, a Benjamin Bogart, which you can Google that if you'd like, from New Braunfels, who got snatched up a while ago and attributed to Adam Waffen, even though it don't make sense, right? And it all seemed like a joke, right? But he's going to spend years in jail, just like other people are going to spend years in jail, and they're going to be labeled as Adam Waffen, right? And it's nothing that I can say about it, all right? Nothing at all. So we're going to see that take place. And not only that, okay, I'm a psychic, so pretty soon you're going to see actual physical terroristic things being carried out by, quote, Adam Waffen. And then after that takes place, Adam Waffen may, for example, be banned from the internet. Maybe you won't be able to say Adam Waffen. Maybe only certain people will be able to say Adam Waffen. Right? Maybe it's going to click certain algorithms and they're going to find you and ban you for saying anything about this Adam Waffen as something that they totally conjured up, made up. And not only that, if they didn't conjure it up and it was a real thing, they're actually bolstering it through the media publications and giving it all sort of publicity that it would want if it was a real thing, and meanwhile it's not a real thing. So isn't that wild? Man, I assume that people can hear me. I'm always thinking about it in the back of my mind. It's like, man, people can hear me, right? They're not just here watching nothing. I assume that's the case, all right? But I look forward to hearing from y'all. So, like, that's to get a gist. Like, it's really bad. Really, really bad. Like, for this example, this is weird. But what it does is promotes and fosters, like, for example, the homeless becoming untouchables. For example, like, you can't go and give them change. No, because that's dangerous. Why? Because they might have corona and be sick, disgusting old homeless people. Why would you touch them or look at them? Instead, you do a debit card thing through your cell phone. You feel all good about yourself. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what they're. You know what? I don't put it past them to start mandating that sort of stuff. And in fact, if Corona gets out of hand, which it will inevitably in certain areas, I can't say about all of America, but definitely certain areas, you for sure won't be able to, like, touch homeless people or come close to them or something like that. They're going to start putting in those policies. Former Bexar County Constable Barrientos, certain things, I mean, that's cool. We might look into it. I don't know if she was trying to get all up on Pepe the Frog up in the hot tub. But that was what was alleged, all right? There's all sort of interesting things that we could talk about to no end. And I mean every last one of these things. Like, for example, I don't know what's going on here with the Cookie Monster and overdosing. And they're trying to charge her with neglect and everything. I don't know anything about this lady. Maybe she's not guilty of all. Maybe she's not tripping off of drugs in this particular all right, so we got some audio. Thank you, Paul's okay. I appreciate you out there. Dear contributor to this channel. By the way, definitely it's in the back of my mind as all this calamity is breaking out, and I know that you see it out there. You're experiencing it probably just exactly like I am. And you want to keep your ear to the ground and hear things. You want to know, you want to be kind of alert. And if you're like me, at the same time, you're very weary of being tied to this phone and tied to the gadgetry and stuff like that, because it's coming a time probably in which, that's not going to be appropriate to do. And so it's like a delicate dance and a balance and stuff, and it might seem like laziness, and maybe it is, but where you're just trying not to be too much on the internet, but at the same time, we're in a battle, and there's communication that needs to take place, and I believe that's what we're doing right here. It might not have any rhyme or reason from the outside looking in, but for us, it's making good sense when you look at this lady, the Cookie Monster, and what she's being alleged to have done. And I guess they gave her some sort of thing for heroin overdose, and I'm not sure. Maybe that's what she overdosed from. Can't say what it was necessarily. Can't say much about this lady. It makes you wonder all sort of things. The article didn't say this lady had a partner, if you will, a spouse. Actually, I mean, if it didn't say she had a husband or, for that matter, a wife. And I assume that she did, or I don't know what was going on. But look at it. It's got a certain look about her. Kind of cartoonish look. Kind of an NPC look. Tripping out on drugs. All right. I don't want to assume anything about this lady. But that's kind of wild. That's a little bit wild. See, I don't know if I want to stress on necessarily, but for example, if you hadn't seen the guy who jumped into the lion's pit, I assume he was tripping off drugs, but maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was, in fact, coming off of drugs, as far as psychotropic drugs, these SSRIs. Maybe he never had a drug in his life. I couldn't say necessarily, but according to this article, what he did is he attempted. He did not succeed. Right? He attempted by stripping bald naked and jumping up with the lions, and they immediately, according to the articles, immediately started just biting on this fool. They did not hesitate. They would. They didn't ask no questions. They just started to biting, and all the crowd was like, "Oh, geez!" And they started freaking out. It's traumatic to them. You don't want to see that. And that's just an example of humanity. When someone's getting all ate up by the lions, it should be a natural reaction for everybody to look around and panic. All right, so that's what happens. The setting. Somehow, some way, they were able to shoot these lions down or something. They euthanized them somehow, and got him from murdering this guy, and he actually has wound up living. And I don't know how coherent he is right now, but I understand allegedly that his injuries are a pretty good head injury and a hip injury as well. And I don't know if it even goes further than that. And they made it, in fact, they said in the article, I remember seeing that, they said they plan for him to 100% recover. All right. And then, according to the article, they actually explained that he did all this because of the, if I remember correctly, apocalyptic times that we're in. These times that we've been talking about this entire broadcast, just at whim, just over and over, this one and that one, and this one and that one. Those are the reasons why he decided to jump into a lion's den and get all ate up. And he did get ate up, but he wound up living. He just got bit real bad, real bad. But I would suggest, don't do something just because I say, but I would suggest not doing this. Don't do this. Why would you do this? All the while stuff happening. But the thing is, I guess just to dive into it a little bit, I can kind of see the reasoning. All right? And not really, because I wouldn't do it. I'm here to tell you right now that I'm not for doing this. And I would suggest for you to not do this. It doesn't make any kind of sense to me. At the same time, he is talking about apocalyptic times. This is kind of a biblical thing he did. It's not like it's completely random what he did. In a sense, it has some logic, and I recognize it for that. And I can appreciate it for that. And then at times we see, in a way, he gets the situation a little bit more than most people get it. And then that we're in some crazy old times, and it only looks to get crazier. And when I say that, I don't mean like in a funny way, like we're going to be laughing about it. We're not going to be laughing about it. All right, we might be laughing about this guy and the lion and everything, and the fact that he's going to recover. And meanwhile, all these apocalyptic things that he was talking about allegedly, they're still taking place. And on top of that, he's got major lion wounds all on his body, and that's the only difference. That's the only difference. Meanwhile, what I want to point out is that this guy at all, I just want to point this out and wish him the best, wish him all the best. But if this guy at all could articulate any sort of sentences and put them together and with thoughts, coherent thoughts, what he could do right now is turn around and immediately start a podcast in which he talks about all the apocalyptic things that in which he was talking about. And honestly, I don't know if that would heal his spirit necessarily, and that's the most important thing is to heal your spirit. It doesn't matter about everything else. You can put that on the back burner. But as far as like if you wanted to financially like just make a career out of it, he would be the guy who jumped into the lion's den all stark naked and just got bit up by some lions because of the apocalypse taking up. You know what I'm saying? So he would easily be able to get a big, big following of people to listen to him, but at the same time, that might not be the answer to his problems. Financially, it would have him set. He wouldn't have to have a job and all the things that we have and stuff like that. I bet you anything he'd financially be taken care of, but at the same time, it would not heal his spirit. All right. In which, just briefly, before we get on to some other stuff, probably the most important thing that I can say during all of this, and I say it sometimes, is to forgive and the power of forgiveness, and to realize that you used to do things that you cannot explain, and if you had to explain them to other folks right now, you'd have a hard time doing it. Me too. I also have done things that I could just not even explain to you, and why I thought it was a good idea. And this is way into my teens, my early 20s and everything, to my mid 20s. And you know what I'm saying? Like for a long time, doing weird things, wild things. I woke up, right? The way in which briefly that it took place, and I would imagine it takes place for everybody. And just as Lee Peterson says it, although I somehow knew this before I came across it, and I know a lot of people would say this. In fact, the Bible says it is to forgive. All right, it's gonna be hard to do. It's gonna be hard to do in this time, just like in all throughout time, but in this time especially because people are gonna be doing wild things. You might want to get angry at those people. You might be like, hey, looking at these people say that lady, she zipped her boyfriend up in a suitcase and he died of asphyxiation and she wants to play it off. And you might want to be angry at her. I don't think that's going to help. Not at all. All right. Everybody deserves justice, to include that lady. All right. But to be angry at her does not make any sense. She's doing things she don't even know why she's doing any of these things. I got an answer for her. It's called Satan. All right. You don't want to call it Satan, maybe you want to call it something else, but it is what it is, and you didn't know why you were doing what you're doing. You were possessed by the devil, all right? And it made you do wild things. Maybe that Cookie Monster lady, she was possessed by the devil, all right? But I don't know. That's all alleged, all right? And none of these people are guilty until the court says, and they knock down that gavel and say, oh, this person's guilty, but beyond a reasonable doubt. In fact, there's a jury of their peers, and they were thinking with a sound mind, and they were aware of jury nullification, and they were aware of all of their rights, and they were aware of the fact is we got to prove that this person did a specific crime beyond a reasonable doubt and have all sort of evidence. All right, and after they do all that sort of stuff and they have all sort of witnesses and this and that whatever's appropriate to that particular case, and they have all the documentation that they realize either that person's guilty or that person's innocent, and there is no in between. All right, and after that, why don't you get over it? All right, most people's brains, I would imagine, don't operate that way. It's unfortunate. They can't forgive those people, and they look at criminals and like, oh, I want them to rot in prison. Oh, I want to see it and then watch it. I want to, I want to be immersed in it or something. But they don't want to get into the danger zone necessarily. They want to do it safe in the privacy of their cozy living room, but they want to know that people are rotting in prison because that's justice to them, right? The problem is that they're angry at these people. And everybody's all misled, to include the people in the prison who's guilty, they're misled. People who's outside of the prison who's guilty, they're misled. For the people who's all angry at those people for being guilty, they're misled. And pretty much everyone's misled, all right? Meanwhile, what I would suggest, and it's just my suggestion, but from what I've seen, people need to stop texting me. I'm so dang popular, all right? But that's the fourth time they interrupted my broadcast, and I'm about to put the smack down, all right? It's like, what the hell was I talking about? Okay, so the whole situation is people want to dog on the due process, the legislation that we have in place, and say that it doesn't work because we let all sort of criminals let go and we put innocent people in prison sometimes. I would say halfway you're correct. It doesn't work. It's not being operated well at all. But however, it actually does work. I mean, it's supposed to work the way that if you just worked it the way it's supposed to work, it would work just fine. And in fact, it would solve a lot of these here problems. All right, it's like if you can imagine if you had a car and the car is tuned up and it's just in working order, it's pristine, and then you got a dog and put it in the driver's seat and you say, well, let's see what we can do. And then you started the car and everything and you're trying to get it to go. It was not doing what you wanted to do. And you're like, stupid car, this car is worthless. And meanwhile, you're not looking at the dog driving in the damn car, right? That's basically what it is I think that we're looking at as far as our legal system. And in fact, before we get into Google and we find out actually what's going on in the news, I don't know what time it is. All right, we got a little bit of time. All right, we got about 30 minutes probably to get into Google and see what it is they're talking about, to get acquainted with what's popping, what's really breaking in the streets right now today. But like I was saying, what I would suggest, because I'm crazy, is that you would do what we're doing right now as far as the courts, as far as the judges, as far as everything that involves, and you would expand upon that to be more localized. Now, it would seem like you're growing the government sort of in a way, and people would be wary of that. But I would say the only expansion that you're doing is to localize everything. Like, for example, the courts that you're having that are overran with all these court cases that take forever to get done with, and by that time everyone's forgot about it. We could streamline that by not having one judge in one court, but in fact in that general area having, say, 5 courts, to give an example, and 5 judges. And meanwhile they're all respected, and meanwhile they're all elected, and meanwhile they all are they're mandated to go ahead and take care of their area and be respectable people, by the way, and be elected. But what that would entail is general citizenry knowing about their local officials, and in fact probably knowing them personally, and in fact shaking hands with whoever's the judge in your local area, like on a weekly basis. I'm talking about extremely local. And just to get in, because what is happening is bottlenecking. Is what you're experiencing, and because of the bottleneck, all sort of injustice happens. And not only that, excuses are then made for the future injustices that are going to take place, and everybody gets stagnant in that idea that justice is never going to take place. And meanwhile, the children suffer the most this entire time. All right, so it would have to be more localized. That's to say that it's expansive, but it would be us actually operating the tools that we have in place already. Like I said, innocent before proven guilty, and that is the whole point. And juries of your peers, what does that mean? All right, and jury nullification. There's all sort of things. The Constitution. All right. You know what I'm saying? Certain people wouldn't want you to know about that, all right? certain people to include Google. So that's why we're going to keep an eye on them. Before we get out of here, we got about, let's see if we got about 30 minutes, all right? I got some tea right here. We're enjoying ourselves. We're going to check out Google, but I really want to know what's happening in your area, all right? Because see if we can check out Google about as fast as we can. And then see if we can go around the world or across the world. I don't know how they say it in flat earth terminology, but I want to go from place to place on the earth and discuss them maybe at random. I got a globe here right now because all sort of wild stuff's taking place, and typically there's a lot of people from around the world who come across this recording and they would want me to have them shout them out, right? South Africa, for example, a lot of places. As far as the coronavirus, I mean, I would have to go through a list of all sort of people dealing with that, and just things that we're going to talk about in a second. Hopefully, let's get through this whole Google thing if we can. After renouncing white supremacist ideology, Virginia man sentenced to a year in prison. Wow. So that's breaking. We didn't know that that was coming, but we did. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. This is from Washington Post, so you already know what it is, right? The Washington Post has a reputation, so they were talking about this. This is an example that I don't necessarily have to look into. In fact, I won't because I don't have time. But it's popping up all across the nation, in which this guy can even come out and say that he renounces white supremacy. And they'll be like, well, we think you're part of Atomwaffen or some sort of KKK group. And we're going to, even in fact, we're going to put all sort of flags up there. And we're going to call you a Nazi. And you go to jail for a little while. How about that? And he shuts his damn mouth and he goes to jail. Right? So that's how that works. It's a weapon. It's being used as a weapon against you. And there's no other way to describe it. San Antonio now has 10 cases of coronavirus. Here's the thing. That number is only going to go up. It's not going to go down. Better get used to it. In fact, you better savor it if you're in San Antonio like myself. Better go ahead and savor that number 10. And because one day you're going to look back and remember, hey, remember when it was just 10? Yeah, that number is going to go up. I don't care where you're at. In America, the number that you're at right now, go to Google and find out what number it is. That is only going to go up. Broward declares cold weather emergency. A fire risk alert for South Florida. And that's breaking news. I don't find it that significant necessarily. I really don't. Because a lot of people have this sort of things going on during the winter. And they say, oh, it's a fire risk emergency. The only thing that comes to mind is you think about those little heaters, those little ones, the portable ones, all right? Lots of times those and other various items will overheat, but those especially might, most of them have a trigger where if they overheat, they'll turn off. But sometimes if that mechanism ain't working, well, it'll just overheat until it starts a fire up in your place, all right? And I would hope that it's not going to happen. I pray that it's not going to happen. But it's happened before where on very cold instances in places where they're not so used to it being cold, such as Florida. They'll put on temporary heaters and they'll leave their little toddlers in the crib while they go work at the strip club or something like that. Or just go to the club in general. Right? I bring it up just because I heard it a lot of times, and then the house burns down with the babies up in it. All right, so I hope that doesn't happen. All right, but it's a good thing they're talking about fire alerts. People might want to be aware of that. Killed by a cartel, betrayed by his own. U.S. re-examines murder of federal agent and featured in Narcos. Here's what I could tell you. Or what I might suggest. I don't know if you'd agree with me. If it's USA Today, or if it's anything that resembles that sort of mainstream, so a poor excuse for a disgusting lie. All right. The thing is, they're going to tell you about all these gangsters. It's human nature to be interested in it. That's why it's so popular. That's why the movie Goodfellas and on, Godfather and stuff like that. It's been popular. It's always been popular. I might want to talk about that for a second because it brings up something that I've been wanting to talk about, and I might segue that into some Donald Trump talk because I think it's appropriate, right? But this gangster, right? They want to talk about him. Why? Because it gets people's peepers on it, and we start looking at it, and we start looking at their publication. It's kind of interesting. Hashtag, but the thing is, I want to tell you it's not interesting. Hashtag, it's not interesting. All right. Basically, they take the most watered down things or whatever that they can make sure that can't get tied back to the cronies that they're associated with, the people who's paying them. It can't get tied back to them. Some mafia deal because it's sensational, but meanwhile, it's not even half as sensational as what you could actually find out in the terms of the mafia world in terms of different various groups of people running game all over people to the point of murder or taking people's livelihoods for that matter. All right, it doesn't even barely grace the iceberg. It is a damn lie, basically. And when you see USA Today come out with stuff like that, you know it's a damn lie, basically. Or even if it is true, it's insignificant, whatever it is they're talking about. Right. And there's a lot of different instances that we could talk about as far as the mafia is concerned. I've been checking out this guy, Sean Atwood, on YouTube, and you can find him. And he does actual interviews with all sort of ex-mafia, mafiosos and mob bosses and this and that, and all sort of crime cartel people, and he does interviews with them. And it's just super sensational. Meanwhile, the USA Today can't do that. The USA Today can't pull that off. If they do get an interview, it's all a big deal. With Sean Atwood, he gets it all the dang time on the regular. That's just what he does. And so this stuff is some hot, wet garbage, and that's what I wanted to point out. But isn't it interesting? The whole notion, human nature. And the reason I want to segue into Donald Trump is I want to get it off my chest. All right. It's Friday, right? So I'll go ahead and just get it off my chest. Something I thought about, and I can't help but think that it's just human nature. Is that okay? We have a leader in the United States of America. Obviously, we're talking about the president, the executive, right? And then there's different branches as far as checks and balances, right? So, but as far as one man, in the one man seat is the president. He's that one man. He's the president, and nobody else is. All right. What I'm here to suggest, and because it's human nature, it's very easy to see, is that that one man, although a lot of people don't want to admit it to themselves, what you want is a gangster up in that number one man spot. In a sense, not in some senses, not in every sense that the way that you think about gangster, not to be dealing cocaine and all these various things, but what you want is a person who's that assertive, but to have a gangster assertiveness, if you will. You think back to the days of Tupac, and you think about thug life and stuff like that, and just not with the criminality necessarily. Not that necessarily. I don't think you want that necessarily, but you want someone with that same attitude. You want someone with that same swagger. You want someone who enters a room, if they're, like, say, a representative of you, which is what the president is supposed to be around the world, a representative for every one of his constituents who happen to be Americans, right? So what I would want is a guy who enters the room and he commands respect from everybody, and nobody's to be caught slipping around this guy. And you might say lady. Well, if a lady could pull that off, then whatever, if she can pull that off. But whoever it is, I want them to come up in that room and command respect, right? I want you to look at that guy, and if you're running game and stuff, I want you to be scared of that guy. If you're doing the best you can at being good and lifting up your community, I want you to still be like scared that you're not doing enough. Basically, like I want you to be like, I want you to look up to that guy, whoever that guy is, and make sure that you want to get that guy's attention, You know what I'm saying? In sort of a Goodfellas type way. When you think about those movies, always all glamorized for this guy who wound up being a coward and a snitch at the end of the day, anyways, as far as that movie goes. But you want a guy with all that glitz and glamour. You want a guy who commands that respect. You want a guy who comes in and unleashes that macho madness. All right, and the ladies go wild. You want the ladies to go wild. That's what you want, because if you didn't want that, well then something's wrong with you. Maybe you want to be that guy. Maybe you got all sort of jealousy up in your heart, and you want to be that guy. Well then, why don't you try to be that guy? Why don't you start running for president right now? If you think you're that guy, if you deserve all the ladies to go wild, trust me, the ladies go wild over Donald Trump. You wouldn't want to believe it, but they go wild, right? Just for not even his physical nature, although he's kind of a tall guy, right? And he's not I'd say he's not a bad looking guy, but some people will say, oh, he looks like a frog and this and that. Um, he looks like an orange toad and this and that. Okay, but it's the way that he carries himself. Dang it, right? And there's proof on top of proof on top of proof. And it's not to gas up Donald Trump necessarily right now, but it's just the idea. These ideas that we're having, it's like, dude, okay, for example, you turn that around in a hypothetical scenario, you got Bernie Sanders. Imagine him walking into a room, internationally speaking. What type of respect do you think he's going to command? Do you think so? You really think so? You really do? You really think he's going to imagine any one of your uncles or whatever strolling in? If you have an old feeble uncle strolling in on Thanksgiving and stuff, and he's coming in or whatever, and he's kind of like grouchy and he's always complaining and stuff. Imagine him coming up into the door, and y'all gonna pay him any sort of respect more than what he deserves. All right, and so that's what Bernie Sanders is going to be looking for in a hypothetical scenario that he is not even prepared for, and he would never even dare to. He would never even consider the idea if you gave it to him to be the president, right? And I mean, that's the Democratic's number one person. In fact, if I can vote in the primary, whatever, for Bernie Sanders, I'll do it. Well, I might think about doing it. I'm not sure if I'll get it on time as far as my ID goes, but we're going to see about it. And anyways, he's a front runner regardless, and he would command absolutely no respect. But the thing is, the people backing Bernie, they don't even think that that's a factor. They've never factored that in. They've never thought to themselves, here's a feeble, stumbling old man fixing to be up on his second heart attack, and he's always complaining and grouching and stuff and scratching. Nobody can comb his hair or nothing. He waggles his finger all around. Uh, he ain't gonna get no respect nowhere. And that's what's so funny. They cling to the issues, and that's interesting. God bless them for the clinging to the issues. See, they don't like racism. The Bernie Bros don't like racism. God bless them for that. I agree with that. I don't even think racism is a real thing. And the thing is, okay, they don't like it, but they don't like it to the point where they hate white people, and that's where they fell off. You can stop it with that, all right? And then Bernie Sanders, they think, oh, well, he's going to pull our troops out of the Middle East. Not a single chance at all. Because like I said, he's going to walk into a room full of Middle Eastern folks, not get no sort of damn respect. And ain't nothing he could do about it. Oh, and if he wants to do something about it, what is he going to do? Military action. That's the only thing that he's going to do, and that's the only thing he would be able to do. Unless he wanted to totally get disrespected, in which that would happen in front of everybody's faces all over the Middle East, and guess what? We lose all sort of power. There is no third way about it. Either he'd have to start dropping bombs up in the Middle East at random, like a feeble old man would do, or he would get totally disrespected, and there is no three ways about it. So, in essence, that's the thing about it. Donald Trump or no Donald Trump, you want someone who looks like they'll kick somebody's ass. Or dang it, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but just so that you know, that's who you would want. And do you want a dictator? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But you want someone who, when they talk, people shut the hell up, right? And that's something to look forward to. I guess if we're going to Google, I'm not even interested so much in what Google is talking about, but just to think about Donald Trump a little bit more. I don't want to just harp on Donald Trump, but just to point it out. And you might have seen this, Dark. That's not what I'm doing. You might have seen this on the recent, current events, but Donald Trump recently went to India. And I know all sort of coronavirus is going on. And like I said, the numbers are only going to grow greater. As far as the people affected, as far as the people dying. People are going to die. Um, and I'm talking about in America, but even more so in other places. And we're already seeing it. What's going to be the extent of it? We're fixing to watch it. And over here on this end, although I haven't uploaded all sort of videos, which I should have by now, I've been trying to stay this delicate dance. There's different things that I want to share with you that I've been doing, and just to share it with y'all about fitness and wellness and preparation as far as our bodies, to be prepared for to encounter a coronavirus and in fact defeat it with our own nutrition and our own well-being. All right. So certainly we're going to talk about that sort of stuff um, as time goes on. But in the meantime, this has been something that's weighing upon me. If you didn't see it, Donald Trump in India. All right. And certainly it's all sort of videos that we could check out. Let's just go to the pictures though and take it in. Most of y'all probably seen all this, but hopefully you can see some of the crowd. You can see it's pretty eloquent and stuff. Everybody's smiles and everything's looking all nice and sparkly. I wanted to see some pictures of the crowd though. All right, because say what you will about India. I don't live in India and I don't want to. I know some people who do live in India and they're very good people. Um, and shout out to everybody in India. Y'all do have some good people, obviously. You'd have to have so many people. If you have that many people, obviously you're going to have a lot of good people in there. It's not even possible. When you think about the ideas of countries, for example, I think a lot of people forget about this. Not when I say a lot of people, I say like millennials because they've been all mixed up. And people who's younger, they might forget about history. Thing is about a country is it takes effort to make a country. All right, it takes, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about people losing their lives. People are dedicating their whole lives to creating a country, to creating these borders, to having it to where inside those borders there's one specific law and everybody answers to it. It's a whole bunch of effort that goes into it, and most times when that's attempted, it fails miserably, right, and crumbles, and everybody dies out. And so a country, there's something to be said about every country and its sovereignty and its history and its culture and its journey into the future, to include India, especially India. Think about all the dang people up in India. It's so big. All those people. All right. It's unfathomable sometimes to me. But check out this crowd. I was told that crowd, that's as much as I can zoom in, it looks like all sort of little confetti. They were saying it's like 100,000, 125,000 or something like that, give or take. Right? And if you're out here telling me that Obama could command that sort of president, like his presidents could have commanded that sort of people to show up, all right. If you're out here telling me that Bernie Sanders or anyone else, Joe Biden, anybody, name any person who could have 100,000 Indians show up, right? So it's just wild. It's in our face, right? And that they said all sort of lies. They said we hate Donald Trump. They said people overseas hate Donald Trump. It's like, dude, everybody loves Donald Trump. Now, why don't you get over it, right? And we see what you're doing to the point it's criminal. It's criminality what you're doing, right? And it's painfully obvious to the point is where it's so obvious the criminality that we are now. I mean, it's hard to argue that we're not accomplices. It's like you could charge us because we know so well about it. Although you can't charge us. I'm not saying you would charge us for knowing about it. But we know about all this criminality. We know about all this lying and tomfoolery. Right? We're on to you. In fact, we got all sort of proof. We got all sort of proof. And what we're going to do, here's what I want to get, the point that I wanted to touch upon before we got out of here, especially. All right. So as we wind it down, I want to hear from y'all out there. We talked about certain places like India, for example, but there's certainly other places we could talk about on Earth to include South Africa, right? And never forget South Africa. But, okay, Donald Trump, he's wildly popular. Bernie Sanders would never be able to pull this off, or anybody else for that matter. I want to think about that. But I also want to think about this. The type of power that we have in our hands right now, we got all sort of power. In fact, I think we have all the leverage. We have all the leverage in our hands right now. Meanwhile, we can expect to get attacked in all sort of physical ways, violent ways, even biochemical ways. We've already seen it. It's happening. So, thing is, there's no reason to panic because who's to say who's just going to have it to? As far as the people who've already died from all over China, the coronavirus, panicking wasn't going to help them either. Panicking was not going to save their life, right? Their life was gone, and that was destiny for them. Our life could be gone today, tonight, and that'll be destiny for us. All right. Until then, we're carefully watching them. And in fact, we have all the leverage. And they just can't stand it, and they're so desperate. They're so desperate. And that's why I bring up Bernie Sanders. It's because from what I've seen, like him or hate him, there's people all sort of out there in different variations. Doesn't really matter. From what I'm seeing, Bernie Sanders has gone rogue. He's gone rogue. All right, and I
Low
can't.
battery.
Oh, geez. What the heck? I gotta plug that in. Hold on 1 second. We got a technical difficulty. Deep State trying to interrupt me, but I want to get this point out. Okay, hold on. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, we have all the power, like I was saying. And I want to just, and in a lot of different ways this is true, but very simply, speaking about Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, I've seen Bernie Sanders, he's gone rogue. This is why you can tell that the DNC hates him. This is why they're talking about this Russia stuff on Bernie now. He's the Russian asset because they hate him. It is quite clear. Why? Because he's gone rogue. He's doing his own thing. He's making his own. He's skimming his own cream off the top. He's been doing that for decades, and they've let him do it because it serves their agenda. Meanwhile, he's been
Low battery.
Oh, what the heck? Anyways, all right, so my bad. But Bernie Sanders, he's been cultivating and slowly manipulating and slowly fabricating up this whole spiel that he goes on, which is his supposed beliefs. He's been gauging the public for decades to see what he can get away with and what he's going to press upon the public in a gradual sense so that nobody could tell, right? And so he's been doing this and cultivating the whole thing. Meanwhile, he's been drifting away. He's been drifting even more communist than the rest of the DNC would like to be in the future. And of course, that's of course what they want, but they don't want it so fast because it's not gradual enough. Bernie Sanders took the ball and ran with it, and he's gotten even more radical and just more public with it. So that when people like us see it, we're like, oh man, they're going crazy radical. Look at them. Just look at Bernie Sanders. He's talking about killing all the babies and stuff. That'll make the earth get cold. It's like, what? So we're like, what? That's what it is? And the DNC is like, no, shut up, Bernie. Shut up, Bernie. We don't want him to know and kill all the babies to make the earth cold. And so he's gone rogue. Meanwhile, he's taking all the cream. He's getting that money, he's getting those donations, and he's living it fat and sassy. Not a problem. And he doesn't get questioned because he has it to where if you're going to ask him questions, he's going to drown you out and pretend like you're not there. He's gone rogue. All right. Meanwhile, he is, as much as it is a Twilight Zone, the number one candidate for the Democratic Party. And that is whether or not you like him. I don't like him. I don't like his finger or his hair. But it doesn't matter. He's number one. Right? And in that, we have our power because we see reality. There's people out there who don't even see the reality of it. Whether or not they're Bernie bros, some Bernie bros see it. Some of them don't see it. Everybody who's for the DNC and everything, they don't like it. They don't like Bernie no more. Right? But meanwhile, they're a minority. The majority of them like Bernie and the Bernie Bros, and they don't even understand his policies, nor do they want to. They're eager to get illegal reefer and whatever, and what they call pro-choice or whatever. All right, to get the government out of their business, even though that's exactly what Bernie's not going to do, and to get the troops out of the Middle East, even though that's exactly what Bernie wouldn't be able to do. All right. So, but the thing is, he's number one, and that it lies our power because we're not angry at Bernie Sanders. We see that he's got his own thing going. All right. God bless him. He's off on some other. He's gone rogue. All right. We see that, and yet still we're not angry at him, and we could tell that in reality he's number one by a long shot. And so, with that in mind, if I can get my identification squared away before then, I don't even know when the Texas primary or whatever, I don't know when that goes down. I'm still not very familiar with the political process as far as voting. But if I could vote for the primary to see who's the candidate of the Democratic Party, I would vote Bernie. I'm here to tell you, and I don't know if that's illegal that I share that with you, but I would definitely vote Bernie. Bernie all the way. Because the problem is that forces their hand, right? Then they have to put a Bernie up. And just like everybody knows out there, or you should know it if you don't know it, in a debate scenario, Bernie gets dismantled with that macho madness. The macho madness would run wild all over Bernie. All right, the video scope wouldn't even be able to capture the mania, the Hulkamania. All over Bernie, and he doesn't even realize, and the Bernie Bros don't even realize it either necessarily. When you consider everything, the child killing, for example, the baby killing, when you factor that in, when you factor taking away quote assault weapons, you factor that in, right? When you factor in the $15 minimum wage, you factor that in. Donald Trump is going to have his way with this guy, his way with him, to the point where it's going to be embarrassing all over the place. And then when you start including stuff like the those essays, if you know what I'm talking about, with his fantasies, his romantic fantasies, if you will, it's gonna be a damn circus, dude. It's gonna be so easy. It's gonna be the easiest thing Donald Trump ever did. However, there's different things going on politically to include the corona that they're trying, and I've seen headlines already. We got to get out of here. We don't want to go over time, but I got to let you know, if you haven't seen them, I've seen headlines that are blaming Donald Trump for the coronavirus already. And they're going to do it. The coronavirus is going to spill all out over, and they are going to blame him. Right? And there's certain things they gotta hope that the cities shut down, and that would be in their benefit for cities to shut down and be quarantined, certain cities, and it's stopping the infrastructure and it's stopping the economy in certain areas. That's what they could hope for. That's what they would hope for. It would benefit them. Who am I talking about? Wouldn't it benefit them in all sort of ways? All right, and then politically it would benefit them too if they're blaming Donald Trump, wouldn't it? So it would benefit them in all sort of ways. In all sort of ways, like for example, you got the vaccine that they're gonna definitely push on you, and that vaccine is gonna cost money, and that money is gonna go into someone's pockets, and that's gonna be a benefit to them. All sort of benefits. I mean, the benefits are just abounding, right? So with that being, it's like if we see reality, I think everybody else might see reality. We got to find out because a lot of people are going to panic. A lot of people are going to be very panicked over it. And so we're going to have to let the chips fall as they may. That's where I see it. That's where I see it from here. And that might seem like, helpless. Oh, we're all grains of sand and we're just blowing in the wind. In a sense, I think that's correct. But in a sense, we got all sort of power by loving each other, right? Forgiving each other. Even though lots of people just be traitors to America. And I'm not going to name names, but already you know the names that I'm talking about. So with that being said, I think we got some stuff across. We got Paul's Okash up in the Dane building. And we got a few others. And I appreciate all y'all out there. Um, as we get out of here, I want to say, yeah, I'm lazy. Yeah. As far as, when it comes to, say, editing and stuff, man, I got really into editing, especially when I couldn't publicly be talking about loving America, right? Certain places where that's not appreciated. All right. But once I got to a place where I could talk freely and openly about my First Amendment and live in America, I was like, oh man, I want to get more onto these internet things and talk and have a podcast and do this and that and talk with people and get all sort of feedback and all these people out here. I got boots on the ground and they're giving me and feeding me all sort of information. I just want to be a beacon of that. All right. And I tried to pull that off, but my technology was not working out. All right. Financially speaking, I couldn't do that. Now, in the future, the plans go, and obviously plans, you already know what it is about plans. All right, we're not promised tomorrow, but the plans is that I get some more finances and invest a little bit into having a broadcast, maybe where you can see my face. I would pay for the internet and stuff like this. This is hypotheticals, all right? This may never happen. In fact, you and I might be gone tomorrow with all sort of corona. Right. But if plans were to keep going this way, would have a better broadcast as far as you could see my face. Maybe you could talk to me. Maybe people could call in. All sort of jazz, and talk to each other. Plan to do that, sort of. And in the meantime, been in kind of a hiatus. I know that there's different technologies out there, and they're popping up all the time. And in fact, there's more than enough, say, forums and applications for those forums to get on to do, say, video, whatever it is that we're doing right here. And then not only that, live streaming platforms all over the place. I mean, it's a buyer's market as far as all that goes. I mean, it's unlimited. And I guess the laziness comes into that YouTube is not yet all that bad for coming into contact with people. All right, even if it's just a handful of people, you're gonna find people who are very much on the same page, on the same wavelength, and come into contact, and then they'll be thinking about the same things, and you can commiserate about that. It's all sort of success involved in that. That's the only amount of success that's even present on YouTube at this point. And besides that, there's absolutely no freaking reason to be on YouTube at all, right? In a sense, it's like, like for example, if you wanted to reach people in order to change their mind, in order to, like, say, convince them to love America, that's not worth it on YouTube. It's not worth it because you're not going to find anybody. The people who love America already love America, all right? So you're not going to change no one's mind. I mean, of course, there's children who are being molded, and you would want to give them a good impression about loving America, but yet and still, that's basically being banned from YouTube systematically, gradually. You won't be able to communicate with the children anyways. So it's losing all its purpose, YouTube. In that sense, I do recognize that. For as lazy as I am, I recognize YouTube. It's an empty husk. It's the Titanic, but it's the Titanic down at the bottom of the ocean already. I don't even know how we're breathing. We must have like scuba gear down here, but it's already done. It's so done. And meanwhile, these other technologies and these other platforms are only getting more and more bigger. And it's just more recent, and they're getting more easier and user friendly. And that's what's kind of kept us at bay. But now they're becoming so user friendly that we might just jump over, and who knows, we might do that. And it's like, why have we been on YouTube so long? It makes you wonder. But that's what I plan to look into in the near future, a way in which, okay, if I had my way, and it may never happen, but this podcast that y'all, for whatever reason, you listen to it, you might want to be a part of it. I want you to be a part of it. That would be my vision. And once you could be a part of it, all sort of people would be a part of it. It'd be a kind of a free speech type thing. You want to bring up some sort of stuff? Come on down and we'll talk about it. It's a podcast just like everybody else's podcast out there. And there's so many people with podcasts out there. And you might get to thinking, oh well, it's just too many people. It's never enough. It's actually, well, that's what I found out about podcasts. It's literally never ever enough. You'll never have enough podcasts. And I don't care who you are. You're gonna at least get a couple dozen people to be watching you regularly, right? And so if that sounds good, that's the world of podcasts. But not only that, you dive into the world of the internet, in which you'll probably get bullied, and you'll probably get threatened, you'll probably get death threatened, you'll probably get all sort of different vulgar messages sent to you. And that's the danger of the internet. All right, but that's what I would want to do, and I want to multicast, and I don't want to do this because I'm so lazy. It's like, dude, I wish I could have a producer, but that's not possible because I wouldn't be able to pay him nothing. All right. Okay, so that's what I envision, and perhaps that's where we'll go. In the meantime, there's all sorts of stuff that I've been wanting to share with y'all, and I haven't. I just haven't uploaded it. As far as say wellness, health and wellness, I am on a program. All right, it's kind of leisurely. I want to give y'all some updates because certainly there are all sort of updates that I could give with y'all and share with y'all. Some of the gains that I've been making, right? And the gains that we're going to be making in the future. I could be talking about that sometimes, but it's never enough time. For example, you know, to edit the videos or to do whatever and to put on, to upload the videos takes so long, right? And that's why it would be an extra benefit to do the podcast thing. So we get it all out. You know what I'm saying? Maybe like whatever's on my mind on a daily type basis. And that's what I envision that most people will do. All right, they'll be doing this daily type stuff, and what's going to come of that is results completely outside of the internet. We've already gone over the time limit, right? But it'll spill out all over the place. All right, when we start communicating, it's actually through these podcasts that it's not, you can't see it yet, maybe not yet, but just through these podcasts that it's going to spill out all over the world. When we get a number of podcasts, when we reach that number, we've not reached it yet, it's going to spill out all over the world, and conversation will be flowing out all over. And when that happens, we'll realize, oh, we're being messed over, and all our neighbors and us should get together and put an end to it. And in fact, perhaps now we're the judges, right? Perhaps now we run the courts. Perhaps now we're going to do it our way, and we're going to innovate, and we're going to have all sort of technology to get this stuff done the way it was supposed to get done. While y'all jokers just been messing around this whole time and covering up for pedophiles, and we know it, all right? We know about it. It's February the 28th, tomorrow's leap day, all right? Like I said, anything goes tomorrow, whatever you do, nobody can remember it. It is leap day, so I'll holler at y'all a little bit later. It's 2020.